saw a familiar face walking on the avenue. Both surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too.
It's two.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Gung Ho. It's November 12th, 2025. I have my friend here, Jim Henry. I've become a co-host in many respects. But I want you people to know something about us and how we wound up being here. I'll let Jim go first. Some pedigree.
Well, I'm an attorney, investigative economist. I do a lot of journalism and writing. I teach at Yale, a course on global justice problems, and I live in Sag Harbor. We've been fighting these battles against Trump and his criminal associates for quite a while, writing about it. And it's coming back. I think it's still a lively topic. The Epstein story has not gone away, and actually it's breaking headlines as we speak. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But I'm delighted to be here with you.
Me and Jim go back quite a ways. It's always been about fighting doing the right thing, fighting to do the right thing. I am a retired criminal defense attorney since 2015. The Veterans Administration actually deemed me 100% disabled and unemployable because of several service-connected disabilities. I won't go into that. So I'm still an attorney in good standing, so I'm doing things pro bono. This I'm okay with, it's fine, I could speak, I could help. I got involved in Trump going back to 2018 when I heard Ari Melba mention on his show that a guy by the name of Felix Sater and the Trump organization were trying to put a deal together for a Trump Tower in Moscow during Trump's campaign. I heard that, I started doing some research, and I found out that this guy Felix Sater he was actually an informer on one of my big cases in 2000, big case, mob case, both mobs, Russian and Italian. And he was still around, and Ari Melba was talking about him, and I started finding things out about him, and I came forward. I came forward, I'm on the record, still trying to tell the story about the relationship between Felix Sater, an FBI informer, and Trump and the Russians, and it's all about money.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. Recently, we had Mamdani elected mayor of New York. That's a real breakthrough for people who are center-left like me. And Democrats, in fact, all over the country were winning to their surprise. And I think Trump's popularity ratings have been plummeting. It's at the lowest level, around 37% nationwide. The problem is the Democrats. We just saw this weekend where 8 of them defected and voted in favor of ending the budget shutdown. Today, you have 1 million people going back to getting salaries in the federal government. That's a good thing, but it's only going to last until the end of January, and then we have to go through all this again. Meanwhile, people on food stamps have had their food stamps disrupted, and we have something like 24 million Americans getting notifications about their health insurance under the Obama plan. They had subsidized insurance for poor people, and now they're getting 30 to 40% or more increases in their insurance premiums. So a lot of people are going to get hurt because of the failure of the Democrats to stick together. You had this, the United States has this weird rule that no other industrial country has, which is that if you don't have both parties pass a budget, then there's no continuing operation of the federal government except for critical workers. No one else in Germany or the UK, if they don't pass a budget, they just continue with last year's budget, or they elect a new prime minister. But we don't have that system. I'm sure that if Trump had to face an election today, 60% of the American people would vote for somebody else. There's no question about that. But because we have this weird rule about budgets, he's able to hold everybody hostage, including some of the poorest people on the planet. And why has he done that? Because his tax bill that he passed this summer contains a $4 trillion gift to the richest people on the planet, the top 1%. The only way to pay for that is by having tariffs and by cutting spending. And that's what he's been up to with all these spending cuts. But I could go on about it. I think the other thing to be aware of right now is you look at the Ukraine war. Basically, Russia has been stalled out in the Ukraine war. The latest casualty figures for Russia, 220,000 dead Russians. The United States during World War II lost 291,000. So it's after 4 years of war in the Ukraine, Putin has put his people through a World War II-like experience, but he doesn't show any signs of backing down. The Russian economy is stalled, and he's very vulnerable to maintaining Russian oil exports. 7 million barrels a day that they have to export to pay for this war. Trump made noises about cutting this off, but he gave Putin until the end of November to stop exporting oil and for sanctions to be implemented. He's implemented some sanctions against 2 Russian companies that are exporting oil. But basically, the Russian oil exports have not been affected at all. They're still maintaining, they're piling up in the tankers offshore. This is important because what did Trump promise before he was elected? He was going to stop this war
There never would have been.
in one day. And he claimed that he would never have had a war, but he was going to stop at day one. 53 times he made that promise on the campaign trail. Now it's 10 months into the year, 11 months into the year, and he hasn't stopped it at all. The war is continuing and even accelerating. So that's another whole reason why Americans should be appalled at this president.
His whole record with Putin. I mean, you're talking something that's an aberration. An American president that admires Putin, who is basically running a mafia state. That's who he looks up to.
And he's emulating him. He wants to invade Venezuela. He's got the carrier fleet in the Caribbean on the verge of invading Venezuela, which has never had a war with the United States. I mean, is not. It's a dictatorship, but it's not a country we would go to war with. They're not even the source of fentanyl, which is a big drug export from Latin America. Most of that comes up the west coast.
Back to healthcare.
Yeah.
Aren't there many industrial nations that have healthcare from birth to death?
Yeah, absolutely. All the
And
Western.
and we're one of them that doesn't.
Yeah. If you look at our ratings in the OECD, we are way down the list in terms of health quality, in terms of public health. Countries like Sweden and the UK even,
Denmark,
for all its problems, Denmark,
Mexico,
Scandinavia, they have lifetime health insurance and also have child care, so I mean, that's a basic market imperfection. You can't go to a bank and get a loan to fund daycare. You can't get a loan to basically fund healthcare. It's a basic problem with the free market economy. And so that's what these European countries have recognized, and they've stepped in. But the United States is still living in the 18th century.
This goes back to Nixon. He's the one that started the supplemental insurance, the private insurance coming into the healthcare market. And it could be very expensive.
Well, I mean, Nixon was at least willing to have some subsidies. Trump wants to cut out the subsidies. The Republican Party has moved way to the right from Nixon on environment and other issues. And they've on healthcare is just an example. I mean,
Everything that Trump is doing hurts us. And we know now that Trump started hanging out with Russian KGB back in 1987. The KGB invited him over to the Soviet Union in 1987. And he was merely one of their intelligence operations. They probably had thousands just looking out, and they reeled him in. And when he came back, he was taking out ads in the major newspapers saying, we should withdraw from NATO. I mean, how dumb can that be? NATO was made to protect us from the Soviet Union, and we had good reason to do that.
Yeah.
And ever since, he's done things that are against our interest and in favor of Putin. And the other thing we found out is that he's a loser. And the only way he has survived is with Soviet money and Russian money. And one of the men that was his major real estate partner was born in Russia, Felix Sater. And he was an FBI informer while he was laundering money with the Trump organization. This is like, it's out there. Trump is like the Russian candidate. It also makes me believe that the Russians have something on him. You know, they've got something on him.
let's just put it this way, he's behaving like a Russian asset. I mean, the idea that he's actually serious about these insane policies that helping to ordinary Americans. I mean, ordinary Americans are getting creamed by the inflation that these tariffs are causing. We have reports from the labor market that jobs although we don't have any data on the labor market because the government shut down, we have private surveys that are showing that they're laying off recruiters. And when you start seeing recruiters in the labor market being laid off, you know the worst is coming. You have Amazon deciding to lay off 30,000 employees and replacing them with AI. That AI is another problem that Trump has let out of control here. I think next year we're looking at a big chance of a 2008 reputation or worse because of this insane policy. But the idea that he is actually trying to make things better for ordinary Americans is just demonstrably false. It hasn't happened. The economy has slowed down. GDP has slowed down since he took office. And we have 1 million job losses since he took office. And there's no sign that there's going to be any turnaround. The stock market loves it because the 7 or 8 AI companies dominate the stock market, and they've been pretty healthy. Although today they've been falling, I noticed. But that the profitability of AI is completely at odds with the rest of the country.
The working class people.
Working class people are going to get creamed by AI, and they don't even own a share of it,
And the working class people think that the Republican Party's on their side. That's a farce.
The survey that came out a couple of weeks ago, I mean, there's a new survey about the literacy of Americans, the illiteracy of Americans. Turns out that 24% of Americans are reading below level 1, which is barely able to read at all, and 56% are now reading below level 5, which is a 5th grade education. So a lot of this is fundamentally the fact that most people never read newspapers. They're only looking at TV. They're not reading books. They can't even try to, and there's no adult education programs anymore in this country. The contrast with Europe in this domain is extraordinary. And the Republican Party, which basically represents this tiny oligarchic elite that controls politics in this country, in both parties, has no interest in helping ordinary people become more effective citizens. So
How does his base look at the fact that at the inauguration, he had a row of billionaires right there in the first.
he had billionaires into the White House this week. They had the day before these health insurance cuts went into effect. He had a gigantic Gatsby party at the White House, and he's introducing people to his $350 million ballroom, and he's gold-plated the White House. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's just grotesque. And I don't know what it takes to have ordinary Americans wake up and care about what's going on. Trump was very successful at saying, oh, the Russia story, that was all nonsense. It wasn't.
not nonsense.
It wasn't nonsense. If you look at what was going on, what was demonstrable was that Trump owed his entire financial recovery after his 6 bankruptcies in the 1990s to Russian and Deutsche Bank money in the early 2000s, and to Felix Sater, who helped him raise even more.
And Trump Tower was like a haven for Russian mafia. They were coming over with cash and buying condos.
You had
It was like their club,
the head of the Russian
their
mafia.
crime club.
They helped the head of and Epstein was involved in this with his predecessor, Robert Maxwell. They helped Semyon Mogilevich, who was the boss of the Moscow gangs, in the late 1990s, late 1980s, early 90s. He got 23 Israeli passports for members of his mafia to go in and buy condos in the Trump Tower so they could travel around the United States. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's hiding in plain view, Joe. There's just never been an investigation, and the reason is that there were prominent Democrats who were involved in making Sater a confidential informant. Loretta Lynch, who was later an attorney general. Andrew Weissman, who's a professor in law now, but he was a right-hand man.
Leslie Caldwell's on MSNBC.
Leslie Caldwell was Sater's attorney.
For the
She's
audience, Leslie Caldwell represented Felix Sater at his sentencing 11 years after he took the plea. I've got the minutes, Jim has the minutes, completely illegal.
We had this dossier of Sater and Rudy Giuliani laundering money through into the Trump Soho on behalf of a Kazakhstan kleptocrat who'd stolen all this money from Kazakhstan, was hiding in Switzerland. They set up all these companies in the Netherlands to launder this money into the Trump Soho. And Trump was showing crapping off around. This is the kleptocrat from Kazakhstan. But this was a case they could have brought against Trump for money laundering. You know, it was a continuing offense, a continuing cover-up. And the people in charge at that time, under the Obama administration, just didn't bring the case. And Mueller failed to investigate Felix Sater.
Yeah, Mueller had a conflict because Felix Sater was working for him. Remember, he was a director of the FBI for 12 years. And Felix Sater was in Trump Tower most of that time, working for him and Andrew Weissman. So getting him to investigate Trump was a big conflict, and I knew nothing would come of it. How could that be?
Well, something came of it last summer when Sater, just recently lost a big lawsuit, and he was found to have damages. The jury held him responsible to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. But he's still roaming around. You see him out and about these days, and he's never been held to account for any of this. Giuliani was just pardoned by Trump just this last week. I don't know if it covers these cases that we're talking about.
For the record, I believe that Trump, a president, can only pardon people for federal convictions.
But they can't pardon him for indictments that were never made. In other words, he was never prosecuted for the money laundering that we had him cold on. So let's assume that he was guilty of money laundering. Giuliani and Sater did all this money laundering, continuing offense into the Trump Soho, but the case was never brought.
You can't pardon people for future crimes, and you can't pardon people that have state convictions.
Right.
And there is a case out there, I think it's in Georgia, where I think 5 lawyers have flipped against Trump. They made a deal to cooperate, and they pled guilty. Trump can't do anything about those convictions. They're state convictions.
But what if it was a case where they never brought the charges. And then,
No.
and later on, they decided to bring the charges. He can't pardon in anticipation.
No, he has to wait for the.
He has to wait for the conviction, right?
Wait for the charge. And it doesn't have to wait for the conviction. Like when Nixon was under fire, he got pardoned. It was obvious that there was a case being brought against him. That was enough.
Well, I just invite you to, do your own research on this, but look at the list of people that Trump has pardoned. They include some of the biggest crypto fraudsters on the planet, some of the biggest sports betting cheats on the planet just recently. And Rudy Giuliani, who, if anybody deserved to be looked at carefully, it's him. So I just think the problem that we're facing is we don't have an effective opposition. Mandani is a good example of someone speaking up about issues that matter, about helping people with affordability.
We don't have.
But we don't have, at the national level, we really don't have someone able to go toe-to-toe with this guy.
We do not have a mainstream media that will tell the truth because they're being controlled by their corporate bosses. They won't let the real story come out.
Well, they just had TikTok acquired by Larry Ellison, who's close to Trump, and Paramount was acquired by Ellison. CBS News was acquired by Ellison family. They've been replacing the management at CBS News with people who are, in agreement with their positions. So, the media is, I've noticed that I'm a Washington Post fan. I mean, I've subscribed to them for 40 years. They were the big vanguard of Watergate. The Washington Post would no longer be capable of bringing an investigation of the Trump administration. They're filled with people who are very critical of Mandani, and they're very sympathetic to some of the Trump initiatives. Times has also drifted way to the right. It's called access journalism. If the Times starts going after Trump, they lose their access to the press conferences, and to the insider information. They need to be more neutral.
What about Epstein? Little by little, things are dripping out.
Yeah, well,
damaging.
what we've learned in the last, I would say, 6 months of looking at this, it was a very good report, first of all, done by a young journalist about J.P. Morgan. And she wrote a piece for Compliance Weekly. It was later picked up by David Enrich at the New York Times, who replayed it. But basically, J.P. Morgan was a big handler of Jeffrey Epstein's financial affairs. He had at least 4,725 suspicious activity reports that J.P. Morgan wanted to file with the U.S. Treasury regarding Epstein's transfers, more than $1.4 billion that was going through his accounts. J.P. Morgan was also heavily involved in a company called Liquidity Funding, and that's another whole story. But there's a pattern here because J.P. Morgan failed to file these suspicious activity reports on time. They were all from the period 2002 to 2013 when Epstein was a J.P. Morgan client. And then Morgan, even after he left the bank, they're supposed to be filed within 30 days with the U.S. Treasury if they find suspicious activity transfers that could be related to criminal activity. And Epstein had been convicted at that point of pedophilia. So this $1.4 billion of transactions that went through J.P. Morgan, they didn't file them until after he died in August of 2019. Why was that? And who decided not to file them? It goes right to the top of J.P. Morgan. Jamie Dimon and the head of the private bank, I believe, were involved in that. They can respond to inquiries and refute it, but they basically held on. And why was that? Because Epstein threatened them. Epstein was going to reveal all the clients that he had introduced to J.P. Morgan during this period. Some very prominent people in both parties. So when Senator Wyden of Oregon went after this information that is still in the U.S. Treasury, and they haven't released these files, on suspicious activity reports. When he went after them, he went after, first of all, when Janet Yellen was still the US Treasury Secretary under Biden, and she refused to give him the information. So we suspect there's prominent Democrats involved in these files as well.
Look, when the feds went after Jeffrey Epstein, it's very unusual to bring an indictment against one person. Usually they do a RICO case, and there are a lot of defendants, and there are a lot of cooperating witnesses.
Yeah.
The way they went about this, it looks like they purposely held back information on people that were involved in that ring, that pedophile ring. They purposely
Well,
ignored
it
them.
wasn't just pedophilia. This financial network that was being run here was handling billions of dollars, and it also involved other banks like Bank America, Deutsche Bank, Julius Baer, the Bank of New York, Mellon. They were involved in these transactions. Two Russian banks we know of, Sberbank and Alpha Bank. This was more like an espionage network. There was money being paid for information, and it looks like it was Mossad as well as maybe the KGB that was involved in this stuff. But what we really need is for the U.S. Treasury to release the FinCEN files that they're sitting on from J.P. Morgan to the U.S. Congress, as Wyden
Isn't it
suggested.
odd that just this week, someone in Congress, some people in Congress subpoenaed the Epstein estate files, and they got them. They just thought about that now.
Well, they got the files I'm talking about a different set of
Yeah,
files.
I know.
The network, financial network transactions files, which would show all of the counterparties who were receiving these billions of dollars.
And remember this, the way things are set up is that the FBI does the investigation, so they really have all, whatever it is, they have it, and then they go to the Department of Justice with what they have. So we need both the FBI files and the Department of Justice files. The FBI files are the most important. That's their investigation. And it looks like to me, it started as a cover-up. They purposely didn't go after, probably 100 people or more. Did not.
The title of this episode should be Epstein Isn't Dead.
No,
Because it
we're
isn't.
over.
We, I'm telling
No,
you.
it's okay.
I saw a